So technology is not something that's necessarily in my wheelhouse, but I'm getting there. I want you to know that today is going to be the beginning of our conversation, a conversation where we work together and talk with each other about acquiring a new set of lenses with just the right prescription so that we can see our world and the people in it differently. Throughout my entire life, I've been able to do some things and get over some things and work through some things and navigate some things in a way that allowed me to feel love over worry. So here it is when you think of a stream just kind of flowing along beautifully. You think of that stream and you know that along the way it's picking up leaves and falling flowers and things like that. Well, the same is true for me, right? So along my life's journey, I've been able to pick up some things. I've been able to pick up some lessons, some relationships, some things that were wonderful and some things that didn't feel so wonderful. But I all the way being able to learn from them and get through them. What I didn't know is that it was something called flow. And so whenever I feel worried, I'm able to feel love over that worry. Whenever I feel weakness, and I'm not talking about the kind of weakness that we're talking about muscles. I'm talking about, when there are things that you really shouldn't be eating, or when there are places you shouldn't be, or maybe people you shouldn't really engage with. They just don't serve you well. That kind of weakness. I've been able to feel love over weariness because not for nothing, I get tired too, you know, and I get exhausted at times. And so I do feel weary. And you know what? I've been able to feel love over wrongdoings, my own, and the ones that people have done to me, right? Grace and mercy. I've been able to feel love over those things. I've also been able to feel love over wanting and wishing, right? Oh man, I wish I had this, or I wish I had that. I want this, and I wish I looked like this or that. All of that, none of that served me well. All of it was just exhausting. And so I get to this place now where I know what it is. And not only do I know what it is, I get to immerse myself in it. And so when I need to feel love over those things, there are certain things that I do, right? And the best word I can use to describe it is saturation. Okay. So I saturate myself in scripture. I saturate myself with prayer. I saturate myself with, yep, television evangelists. Yep, I just back to back to back. And for those of you who know me and love me, you know I'm not a television watcher. But when I am worried or weak or weary or just whatever it is, I saturate myself and I'm able to navigate and get through and work through some very difficult things. And so as we start this conversation and as we go through some things, especially in light of this global pandemic where tens of thousands of people are reinventing themselves and live streaming now. I mean, it's been available since, I don't know, 2014, 15 on Facebook, but now people are finding more ways to connect with people they love and care about. And so, speaking of that connection, I have a guest with me today who definitely pricked my heart when I first met him. That prick made a connection for me, and he has agreed to be a guest today. And I'm going to bring him on, and his name is Mr. Colin Martin. All right, Colin, better
Oh,
pronunciation.
well, first of all, congratulations on mastering the technology. Great job. And thank you for having me to be the first guest on Flow, Friday Flow. I'm excited by this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Colin. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here. I know that Fridays are special days for some people. They earmark those days for special things and it's the start to people's weekend. So I also want to thank everyone who's here watching us now. So do you remember that day, Colin? Do you remember that day when you addressed your board and before you got officially started with your meeting, you shared something very intimate with the group? Can you tell us about that if you remember?
Sure. I've been at Fayette County Chamber of Commerce for just about 18 months now. And at the first board meeting I had, I was getting ready for a colonoscopy a week later and asked for the board to keep me in their prayers. Colonoscopies, unfortunately, become a regular part of my life because I'm a cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with colon cancer. And so let me tell you the quick backstory on that. in 2016. I turned 50 years old, and my wife told me that I needed to go get a physical and a colonoscopy. She's a family practice physician, so she knows of what she speaks. And I did what every good husband does. I ignored her and didn't do it. And so, but then a friend of mine by the name of Doug Bryant uh, dropped dead. He had a pulmonary embolism, and at his daughter's 16th birthday, he died right there, and that scared me to death. And I knew I didn't have a pulmonary embolism, or I felt pretty sure I didn't, but that got my attention. I remember standing in the parking lot at the church where his funeral was, with two friends of mine, two guys named Stacy Faison and Travis Chambers. And I promised them that I would call and make an appointment to get my physical done to make sure that I was in good health. And I did. And early December of that year, 2016, I got my physical. My doctor said, "Man, you look great. Keep doing what you're doing. Um, but we need to get a colonoscopy because you're 50 years old now." So went and did that, um, thinking, okay, I'll put up with the prep, which is the part everybody hates. But then I will just be fine. And I remember going to the colonoscopy thinking I'll get this done, and then we're going to go to breakfast. I'll take the day off and get back to work the next day. I woke up, my wife was standing there, and she said, "They found something." And then the gastroenterologist came in and he said, "I found something. It was bigger than a polyp. I didn't feel comfortable taking it out myself. So I'm going to have you meet with a surgeon this afternoon." So 2 o'clock that afternoon, went to the surgeon, and he said, "What do you remember the doctor telling you, Dr. Patel?" And I kind of rehashed that story I just told you. And he said, "Well, in my experience, this is cancer." And I just remember the feeling at that moment of devastation, because I didn't, your mind goes to the worst place possible. You think chemotherapy, radiation, even death. Do I need to get my affairs in order? But what started to happen at that point, the next day I had a CT scan, and then I had to have another scan because they saw something in my back. The point was, the news got better every day. And by Friday of that week, which was my wedding anniversary, it was our 28th wedding anniversary, 27th, excuse me. It was our 27th wedding anniversary. We found out that the tumor was not very active, that it was very early stage, and that was a good indication of what I could look to in the future. So got through Christmas. The next Wednesday, I went into the hospital to have the colonoscopy done, or not the colonoscopy, excuse me, the colon resection done. And I felt a great sense of peace, and people came, and all kinds of friends came and prayed over me, and stood with Beth and waited in the waiting room with her while the surgery was done. And I woke up, and I remember the surgeon coming into my room when I was finally in the room. He says, "I got it all." And I've been around doctors all my adult life, and I know that, they all say that. They all say, "I got it all. You're good to go." But I still felt a good bit of peace. And I knew the next part was that they were going to look at the lymph nodes to see if there were any cancer cells in the lymph nodes. And that took about 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, I don't remember now, to get the results back. And when the results came back, there were no cancer cells in the lymph node. And I had an appointment with an oncologist a week or two later named Dr. Andy Pippis. And I remember sitting there with him, and Dr. Pippis said, "Well, you got a surgical cure. We don't have to do anything more." So that was such a burden lifted off of me that I wasn't going to have to do any more treatment. Now, that doesn't mean I've not, I went through a period where I got a colonoscopy every year. Every year I get a CT scan every 6 months. So far, I'm in great health, no problems whatsoever. But I tell you, that reframed my view of life, going through that experience. And, I started to figure out there were important things and there were not so important things. And I was going to focus on the important things going forward. And the word that probably best describes how I was going to live my life going forward was the word contribution. And I was going to focus more on what I would contribute instead of some superficial thing like however we define success.
Mm.
So I hope no one ever gets cancer. It's a terrible thing, but I hope when if people get cancer, it's an experience like mine. You catch it early, they're able to remove it, and you can move on with your life with a little worry after that, because that's exactly what happened with me.
Wow. Colin, that's an amazing story, and you had shared a little bit of that at the meeting. What really added to me feeling connected to you was that you asked the group to pray for you.
Right.
I mean, this was a group of people that were brand new to you, and you asked us to pray. Now, I know that intercessory prayer is a powerful thing, but tell us why you asked, of all the things you could have asked us to do, why did you ask us to pray?
Well, first of all, I like you. I believe that when people pray for you and pray with you, that has that has power, and so I felt pretty comfortable about it. I'd gotten to know a few of the folks over time, and so I knew there was people of faith there. I think about the people on the board. Uh, in Fayette County in general is just a community of great faith. So I knew I could make that request and not offend anybody or not make people feel uncomfortable. And also I wanted to at least let the board know in some subtle way my faith is important to me.
Mm,
And another time we can talk about my faith journey. But I had just a few months before had been through kind of a bit of faith trauma, you could say.
mm,
I never lost my faith in God, and as a Christian, never lost that. But I lost my faith in my church,
mm,
and ended up leaving the church and going to another church, which was a pretty traumatic event.
mm.
But I never lost. That was more about an institution than faith in God. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So, but I wanted to make sure I communicated that this is you didn't just hire a guy between 8 and 5; you hired the whole person, and part of that whole person is my faith. So that's why I at least wanted to communicate that.
Oh, Colin. Well, that's powerful, and that is part of this story, and even this message today, because we know that in church, right, when someone gets um, well, offended, or perhaps there are some concerns with the humans in church, that people will leave not only church, but their their faith is compromised, right? And then
Right,
they don't come back. And then so the fact that you didn't, you just knew that it was more about the institution, and you have a relationship, which is the beautiful part, right?
right.
Not for nothing, you I mean, there's a big piece that's missing for me, and maybe even our viewers as well. What built that kind of strength to where you could leave your church, but not leave your faith and your belief in God, and that He would carry you through and allow you to flow?
Well, you said something there that's important is that churches are, and I mean the location, the building, the members. I mean, it's human beings, right? And human beings are going to mess up, and they're going to fall short, and they're going to not live up to the expectation. That doesn't diminish. I mean, today's Good Friday. That doesn't diminish what happened, that 2,000 years ago on that fateful Friday. And you can either be a Good Friday person where all is lost, or you can be a Sunday morning person where it was all gained. And so I knew that the problem was not my faith. The problem was this institution was not where it needed to be, and those are two separate things. But I look, it didn't take long. In fact, I knew where we were going to go as a church home when I told my wife we were going to find a new church, and we've been very happy ever since. And I've actually grown spiritually even there, which is kind of the point. I mean, I was not growing spiritually where we were, and so going to this new church, and I find myself reading not only scripture but books that support the scripture more, and so I felt it was the right move all the way along. But I'll go back to um, the cancer episode, and it really was an episode. It wasn't so much a journey, and that's I'm always a little bit um, hesitant to say I'm a cancer survivor, only because I mean I had cancer and I overcame it with a lot of great medical help and care. But I didn't have one of those arduous journeys that you hear about, multiple surgeries and chemotherapy and radiation and all that. I mean, I was diagnosed on the 19th of December, and on the 28th of December, the cancer was removed, and that's the end of the story as far as that goes. Um, but what it did do is it made me less tolerant of nonsense. And because life's just too short, and so I just and people think I'm a little bit. I've been told, you kind of speak plainly and directly. You don't really kind of wrap it up real sweet. And I'm like, because I don't have time anymore. We're on a mission here to get some stuff done, right? We're not here to we want to make a contribution. We want to connect with eternity,
Mm,
and that's what this is really about. It's not about some of the nonsense we put up with on a day-to-day basis.
you're absolutely right, Colin. That's beautiful. Well, I want to check in with some of our friends. We have some great friends here, and I want you to know that there is a viewer that knows Doug Bryant. Actually, her husband is a very good friend of Doug.
Great guy, loved him.
Oh man, so rest in peace. We've got lots of folks saying hello to us and just confirming that prayer is very, very powerful. And so that's wonderful. If any viewer has any questions for Colin or questions for me, please feel free to put it in the chat. And as we get ready to wrap up, we've got a few more minutes. There's just a couple more questions I want to ask you, Colin. Okay,
Sure.
so the first one is um, if you had to offer any advice to anyone who is now it's a slightly difficult question right now, right? Because I would say
Hmm.
anyone who's going through a difficult time, right? So we know that in this pandemic, we have people who have lost jobs and who have lost loved ones, myself included. People who who are fearful right now, right? But people were feeling this way before the pandemic, right? And so
Right.
what one piece of advice would you or suggestion or what would you what would you offer to them that might help them work through these things or navigate these things in a way where they could have a more peaceful heart?
You're stronger than whatever you're going through. You know, it's really not any more complicated than that.
Mm,
And I have never. I'm 53 now. I have never seen the world crash so quickly for so many people in such a short amount of time. Back in around mid-February, everything was sweetness and light. And now all of a sudden, you're right. We have more jobless claims than any time in American history. In that short of time, commerce has stopped. People are sick. People are dying. What I would say to you is you are stronger than whatever you're going through, and it's not so much. It's that connection with eternity that's important.
mm, mm,
It's that what you do here connects you to eternity, and so that's how I've tried to live my life. I think about the fact that one day I won't be around anymore,
mm,
and I'll be in the eternal presence.
mm,
And I think about my daughters and how they were raised, and then how they'll raise my grandchildren, how those grandchildren will raise their children.
mm,
It's that connection and the things you do now that live on for a long, long time.
mm.
And but whatever you're going through now, you're stronger. And you asked me when we were talking about this about a Bible verse, and I always love the from Philippians chapter 4. I can do all things through Christ who
Mm,
strengthens me.
mm,
Um, it's that faith that gets you through.
yeah,
Because whatever you're going through now, I promise you're stronger than whatever it is.
that's awesome, Colin. Just so you know, a few of our friends are really appreciating your inspiring message. We've got Joyce Beverly and Peggy Thomas that put it in quotes, you are stronger than whatever you are going through. Just really appreciate that nugget. And if anyone has any nuggets that they'd like to share with the group, please put those in the chat box as well. So yes, I was going to ask you to share with everyone that your Bible verse, Colin.
Right.
Um, as we close, I just want to say thank you again for being
My pleasure.
my first guest, for being vulnerable, right? And so, like you said, you're at a place where, what, I this is me, right? And I'm strong. I'm stronger than anything that comes my way. And when you are the kind of epitome of that, you become an example for your family, for your community, and for everyone that you engage with. And that's what you did to me, for me, that day when we met. What was that, a year and a half, 2 years ago?
A year and a half ago, I started officially November 1st,
Wow.
2018. So that probably would have been the second week or third week of November. No, that would have been the second week of November
Wow.
of 2018. Yeah, I'm going to need. We all need each other's prayers right now. I mean, I'm, I just be a little vulnerable too about this. I'm very worried about what we're going to be doing here as we try and lead the community out of this economic malaise that we're going to be in here shortly. And that's been weighing heavily on my mind about, right now, at least in Fayette County, the center of attention is at Piedmont Fayette Hospital, where they're taking care of the people who are sick, and as it should be. Well, eventually that load is going to be lightened, and that's going to resolve. And then the shift is going to be to the Chamber of Commerce and how we're going to help with the governments in Fayette County lead our community out of this economic downturn.
Mm,
And so I've told my staff, if you've never thought your job is important, you're about to learn how important it is,
mm,
because people are going to look for to us to be the leaders in this. And so,
mm,
believe me, I think about that every day. And
mm, mm, mm.
if you want to know what keeps me up at night, that's what's keeping me up at night right now.
Wow, wow. Well, I tell you, Colin, what I will do, as I do all the time, is I pray for family and friends, but I also pray for my community. And I can tell you that as I have just come to the end of some self quarantine myself, now just continuing to shelter in place and having the experience of listening to life go on the outside of my bedroom door, I know how easy it is to be worried and concerned about some things. And so,
Right.
and so I'm going to saturate myself, continue to saturate myself in prayer, and just my faith and belief that, as we always have, we will come together and weather
Yes, we will.
in the strongest of ways as we flow through these things. All right, so we've got the last word, praying for God's wisdom and guidance in you and your team's decision making. That's from Valencia Marivos.
Well, thank you.
Joyce Gaglione says, your positivity gives me strength. And so I believe that today, for our first Friday Flow, we have pricked some hearts. Colin, thank you. I sign off, and for everyone who's been watching, thank you. My heart's desire is for us to flow together and also to stay grounded in what we know is God's love. Thank you. Bye.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. Bye.